Do not be alarmed. There is nothing wrong with your television set. We are in control of all transmissions. We can turn white, black. We can turn black, white. We can change and distort the picture as we wish. We now return control of your television.
I believe Retina Circus started out in the probably mid to early 60s as one of the early light shows for Bill Graham and Winterland and the Fillmore and a lot of the rock and roll scene that was happening here in San Francisco in the very early days of Lightshow. It was a man named Bob Carr and Conrad Keeler were the founders of the Lightshow, and they were doing it in San Francisco here.
And they wound up actually moving to Seattle, where there were no other light shows. They were the only game in town, and so they were able to just sort of capture the whole market. They started doing light shows in the Seattle equivalent of the Fillmore, which is the Eagles Auditorium. What Retina Circus did that was kind of different from the other light shows was that typically a light show would be kind of all over the room. You'd look up and you'd see stuff on the front, and you'd look over here, be stuff over there, behind. They'd project all around the room. Retina Circus kind of had an idea of putting it all into one frame. So it was this whole interplay between the levels of the liquids and the center slides, the background slides, the film, the painted slides, and it was all operated with these dimmers where they would all dim in and out and fade back and forth, and definitely a collaboration, an improvisational kind of performance. At one point, the idea came up of doing sort of our own show, which wouldn't involve a band on stage. We called it portfolios, which was doing visual material to songs, so the original music videos.
Retina Circus at that time also got hired because light shows were sort of fading out, but there was a TV station in Seattle called KEMO TV. So they invited Retina Circus to come down and do a series of television shows at their TV studio, providing the visuals for the television show. And the thing that was unique at this point in time, and this was 1969, was that they did a live quadraphonic broadcast to the city of Seattle. And that means that the TV was the sound in front of you. You got an AM radio and you put it behind you in the room, and then you got FM stereo and you put that on the two sides of you. So in your living room, people could watch at home and actually build a quadraphonic sound. And it turned out very good. And we did 3 or 4 other pieces for this television show. And that was how Retina Circus got involved in television.
In the course of that, the Eagles Auditorium scene started to fade away. At one point it was decided that, gee, we probably ought to move back down to San Francisco. So we all picked up and moved back down to the San Francisco Bay Area. And that's where the real transition in television happened.
They came down, and when they were down here, they found a TV station that is called KEMO TV, KEMO Channel 20, that had just reopened after being closed for 2 or 3 years. And it had reopened as an ethnic TV station. But they didn't have any money, and they also didn't have any crew.
So we just kind of took over, as it were, this TV station.
And our deal with the studio was that we'll do your Spanish programming during the day, but at night you have to let us use the studio and the equipment to do our own type of programming. We may want to do some alternative programming. So we started doing live, underground, rock and roll, some early comedy shows, all sorts of really bizarre stuff, really weird stuff coming out of the late 60s, early 70s. And in those days, us as the crew and other people came in, we did more live programming than any station west of the Mississippi, mainly because we didn't have any money for tape.
I think that, you know, the whole Channel 20 thing for the Retina Circus to move in on was a perfect example of timing and time and space. There aren't many examples of that kind of freedom being able to express itself and happen. So it was obviously a very, very important moment, just not locally, but in broadcasting in general.
One of the shows that emerged was from a group of people that were over in Berkeley, and it was the Chicken Little Comedy Show, which was this wacky mix of comedy pieces that were concocted by these guys, and some were shot on film on various locations around the San Francisco Bay Area.
And they did some great stuff. Most of it was parody of television that was on the air now, so a lot of it were, you know, satirical skits on commercials that were on the air. Most of it actually was that. And things were happening in the world. Watergate was happening at that time, so we did Rancho Watergate and a bunch of other fun things. When San Francisco's Playland out at the beach closed down, Chicken Little was out there and did a little piece using Playland as a location. The last week that it was in existence, the next week it was gone.
Dum 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 the doobie dum 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 the doobie dum 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 the doobie dum wah 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 everybody singing now.
Well, the Persuasions are amazing musicians, and they were friends of Matt Newman and Stuart Birnbaum, who were the principals of Chicken Little, and they used to get together with them and hang out and play basketball. And so Chicken Little invited them down, and they came down one day and did a beautiful piece. They did a little promo with some worms for Chicken Little, but then they went on to do a half-hour great performance that everybody in the studio loved, and we got a great little recording out of it. Most of the writers, I'd say about 3 or 4 or 5 of them, left San Francisco and went on to New York and became the first writing crew and some of the performing crew of Saturday Night Live, the first Saturday Night Live. In particular, one of the great writers and key players within Chicken Little was a man named Don Novello, who created a character for Chicken Little that went on to become a huge star, and that's Father Guido Sarducci.
And now we're being visited by a member of the priesthood, Father Guido Sarducci, visiting this country under the auspices of the Vatican newspaper L'Osservatore Romano. Father Sarducci, tell me, how are you reacting to this alien invasion?
You know, I don't think it's no big a deal, you know. I feel like the hula hoop, I like the twist, you know. Here today, gone
Why
tomorrow.
I took the idea of a priest is when I started performing, I didn't, you know, it was like during Watergate, and I thought, who was I to talk about, you know, some 30-year-old guy from Ohio to talk about, you know, politics. So I thought to take on this persona of a priest kind of gave me authority, and also you could talk, you know, through the eyes of a foreigner, you know. So that was the reason for it.
Now I would like to remind my American viewers.
They were doing these pieces, and I did Father Sarducci for the first time on Chicken Little. A thing called Europe is my beat.
American cigarettes king size. This is Father Guido Sarducci. Arrivederci, America. Arrivederci.
If you want to get funky like a bow-legged monkey, you got to funkifies, yo. You got to funkifies.
We also at that time had hooked up with one of the people who did a program here at the Channel 20, was a guy named Peter Marino. And he actually introduced us to some of the people at Warner Brothers Records who, at that time, Warner Brothers would come out with a whole new set of music. So those new songs would have to be introduced to the people that worked for Warner Brothers all over the country. So we made the first ever new music release information for Warner Brothers Records as video cassettes. And they were a big hit. They convinced, in many ways, Warner Brothers, Elektra, and Atlantic that video is definitely a viable medium for the future and something that they definitely will do all their production on. After 2 years and not making any money at all at Channel 20, we realized that we needed to make some money in order to survive. Warner Brothers was willing to pay for it and willing to pay for us to use higher end and better quality equipment. So it was really just time to move on, time to go the next step. And Retina Circus stayed together for maybe, as an active production company, for 2 or 3 more years after we left Channel 20. So I would say probably the legacy of Retina Circus is to have been in the very early stages of the music video world and to have visualized music for the rock and roll industry, which wasn't being done a whole lot at that time.
You know, it's not something that's died. It's definitely still there. And totally with the idea of sort of getting back into it myself a little bit, in a different way, but just because the memory of those stunning visuals is still very much there, and it'd be fun to sort of realize some of that again.
What's interesting, I think, is that it was the beginning for a lot of people careers in show business, in comedy, you know, and writing comedy, and you know, making the videos.
Channel 20 and the Chicken Little experiments and the entire activity that Andy and Clark and Bob Carr and Connie and a few other people engaged in, a seminal event in mass communications history. Can't say anything more glowing than that. Yeah, it was great. It was really great.
That's all, folks.
Good night.